We're now going to go on a virtual vacation to visit some of the most interesting exoplanets that have since been found. It's hard to tell what to pack: your best winter gear, sunscreen, scuba gear, because these alien planets are all very different from one another. But NASA has designed some pretty cool tourist posters for each of them to promote curiosity and exploration, and using what little data they've been able to collect have brought a small portion of these worlds to life for us. I do have to mention that a lot of what we're about to learn is completely hypothetical and based on what we've been able to learn about these worlds so far using telescopes both in space and on the ground, as well as high-tech computer modeling. So these exoplanets have been confirmed and named, but whether or not they actually do harbor water or any signs of life, microbial, plant, or otherwise, is yet to be determined. That being said, though, pack your stuff and let's go. The first stop on our tour is a planet called 55 Cancri E, also officially named Janssen, where skies sparkle above a never-ending ocean of lava. It lies in a system with 4 other gaseous planets, all orbiting the sun-like star 55 Cancri, about 40 light-years away in the constellation Cancer. And keep in mind that 1 light-year is equal to about 6 trillion miles, just to give you an idea. 55 Cancri E, discovered way back in 2004 using the radial velocity method, is believed to be a rocky world since it lies within the habitable zone of its star, so not too hot and not too cold. It's about twice the size of Earth, and exoplanets this size are dubbed super-Earths by scientists. It orbits its star every 2.8 days and is believed to be tidally locked like our moon is to us, so it has a permanent day side and a permanent night side. And when it was first discovered, it was initially thought to be made up of pure carbon. And well, we all know what happens to carbon under intense heat and pressure. So for a while there, it was believed this planet was either loaded with diamonds or had a solid diamond core. And it's still sometimes playfully called the Diamond Planet, but since then, more recent studies from the Spitzer Space Telescope tell us a different story. And Spitzer concluded that its surface is more than likely full of volcanic activity that blanket the planet in large clouds of dust, and it could be covered in a global lava ocean underneath a thick and dense atmosphere. They estimate that dayside temperatures can reach over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt iron, and nightside temperatures can reach 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So there really is no happy medium here. It's so hot that rocks obviously melt there, and all that silicate vapor in the atmosphere could condense into sparkling, shimmering silicate clouds on the cooler side of the planet. So as you look up, you'll see these wonderful glittering clouds reflecting light from the lava on the surface below. But while that view might be beautiful to look at, this really isn't a pleasant place to visit. It's a little toasty here. So let's pack up and head on over to the TRAPPIST system, where you can planet hop, voted the best HAB zone vacation within 12 parsecs of Earth. And it can be found 40 light-years away towards the direction of the constellation Aquarius. This system, discovered very recently, back in 2017, harbors 7 rocky worlds, all within the habitable zone of their star, all found using the transit method. They're circling an ultra-cool red dwarf star named TRAPPIST-1 that's slightly larger and more massive than Jupiter. All 7 have the potential for water on their surface, whether it be atmospheric water vapor for those closer in, liquid surface water for others, or even ice on those planets that are farther out. But perhaps there's even one with an entire global ocean. And I don't know about you guys, but when I hear about worlds like that, I think Kevin Costner's movie Waterworld. So who knows? Maybe it could happen. But there's one planet, the 4th planet out, named TRAPPIST-1e, that's believed to be the most Earth-like of them all. Imagine looking up into its red sky and seeing 6 other worlds of different sizes looming above you. And imagine what kinds of hues would appear under its deep red sun. All 7 of these worlds are believed to be tidally locked, So again, a permanent day side and a permanent night side, causing them to more than likely have some of the most unusual climates outside of the solar system. And it was this system that set the record for the greatest number of HAB zone planets, and would certainly be an interesting place to visit. Moving on, though, we'll head on over to the exoplanet named 51 Pegasi b, also sometimes called Bellerophon, and it lies 50 light years away in the constellation Pegasus. It was the very first exoplanet to be found circling a sun-like star using the radial velocity method, or wobble method. And it was pretty easy to find, mainly because it's so big. It's 150 times more massive than Earth, but thought to be a gas giant more like Jupiter. It orbits much closer to its star than Mercury does to the Sun, so because of that, its surface temperatures can reach 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. So Bellerophon, much too hot. But the discovery of this planet caused a turning point in modern astronomy. It became known as the discovery that changed the way we think about our universe because it encouraged astronomers to accept the fact that large planets can and do exist in these short period orbits, forcing them to completely rethink everything they thought they knew about planetary formation up until that point. So they now propose that planets don't just stay put, but they can actually form far away and then migrate inwards. And after finding several more worlds like Bellerophon, these planets became known as hot Jupiters, or roaster planets, and they are, to their namesake, incredibly hot. But we'll move on to some places that are more comfortable for us, like Kepler 186f, where the grass is always redder on the other side. And Kepler 186f was announced as the very first near-Earth-sized exoplanet found smack dab in the habitable zone of a red dwarf star. It lies 490 light years away in the constellation Cygnus the Swan and appears to be very Earth-like. So if you were standing on the surface of Kepler 186f, its star would appear 30% bigger in the sky than our sun does here on Earth. But because it's so much dimmer than our sun, being a red dwarf star and all, high noon on even the sunniest day would look a lot like our skies do here an hour before sunset. Scientists also believe that if it does have an Earth-like atmosphere, its sunrises and sunsets could look more enhanced because there's less blue light coming from that red dwarf star. And measurements have confirmed that this planet is only about 11% bigger than Earth, and it is the right distance from its star to have liquid water on its surface. And while Earth has a 365-day year, Kepler 186f takes just 130 Earth days to orbit its star. It has a nearly circular orbit, like Earth, and it might even have seasons due to a tilt in its axis, which affects how much light different parts of the planet get throughout the year. So there are 4 other planets in the system, but all 4 of those planets are much too close to the host star to be considered. And here on Earth, our plants capture energy using chlorophyll, a green pigment that harvests yellow light from the sun. But on a planet like Kepler 186f, if it does have plants, they'd have to adapt to this endless deep red sunset. So with all that red light, alien plant life might adapt to produce different pigments, and very likely these plants will want to absorb as much visible light as they can. So they might take on a black or maybe even a red color, hence the red grass of Kepler 186f. Moving on to Kepler 16b, which is known as the land of 2 suns, where your shadow always has company. But this is kind of false advertising on NASA's part because you can't actually walk on it. It's actually a gas giant, similar in size and mass to Saturn. And it was discovered back in 2011 using the transit method, and it's unique because it orbits the binary star system of Kepler 16 in the constellation Cygnus. It was the very first example of a planet orbiting 2 stars ever found. Just think back to Tatooine from Star Wars, and just imagine how many scientists geeked out when they first found this place. Next up, we have Exoplanet HD 40307G, a memorable name, I know, but a much more interesting place, let me assure you. Experience the gravity of HD 40307G. It's about 7 times the mass of Earth, so because of that, its gravitational pull is more than likely much, much stronger than here on Earth. It's located 42 light years away in the constellation Pictor. And this super Earth is the sixth planet from its star and can be found well within the habitable zone. The other 5 planets that it's in the system with orbit much too close to the star. And it's at such a distance from its parent star that it more than likely rotates on its axis rather than being tidally locked, which means it could have a day-night cycle, a lot like our planet. But it orbits a small orange dwarf star that emits 75% less energy than our own sun. So the planet would be in an almost eternal state of dim twilight. It does still remain on the list of the top 10 potentially habitable places out there, though, if it has an atmosphere, of course. So, Earth 2.0? Maybe. Moving on. Everyone get your flashlights out. We have a planet named PSO J318.522, another very memorable name. But this is a place that you'll never forget because it's more unique than all the rest. It's known as a rogue planet or a free-floating planet because it doesn't orbit any star at all. It just kind of does its own thing. So visit the planet with no star where the nightlife never ends. And this rare exoplanet was discovered back in 2013 using direct imaging. So we were actually able to snap a picture of it. And here it is. It's 80 light years away, and the entire world is thought to be surrounded by clouds made of hot dust and molten iron. Underneath these clouds, temperatures can reach over 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. Not much is known about how planets like this come to exist. It is theorized that they could be failed stars or planets that have been ejected from young systems after an encounter with another planet. So they do glow faintly from the heat of their formation, but once they cool down, they'll be dancing in the dark forever. And all these discoveries just leave us wanting more. But the truth is, these worlds are extremely far out there. We're limited by our own technology right now, but as that improves, so might our understanding of these faraway places. And NASA certainly has a few things in the works, like its new James Webb Space Telescope, set to launch in 2021. And James Webb is designed to be Hubble's successor, and it is the tool that could help us finally bring all of these worlds and the mysteries that they hold into focus. But what about the possibilities for life on these exoplanets, you might wonder? To study that, we really have to get up close and personal with the atmospheres of these worlds to see if the wavelengths of light coming from their atmospheres contain the right chemical components for life, which is kind of hard to do since, again, they're so far away and our technology is so limited. And while it makes sense to look for atmospheres with water, oxygen, methane, nitrogen, maybe even hydrocarbons, and we assume we should be looking for something like ourselves, the truth is life could appear in the strangest of places, surviving in environments we simply can't. So in other words, life could just about be anywhere out there. And we can theorize this based on what we're seeing in the one place we know life exists, Earth. Here on Earth, we have these amazing things called extremophiles. So they're creatures that live in places that would be absolutely intolerable to us humans. These creatures cause us to acknowledge that life can exist and thrive in the harshest of places, perhaps even out there on an alien planet. And examples we have here on Earth are the ice worm. So this attractive little fella here is a centipede-long worm that's able to live in methane ice and will actually melt if exposed to temperatures warmer than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So what do they tell us about life on other planets? Well, recently methane ice was confirmed on Pluto, and on Saturn's moon Titan there are seas of liquid methane. So if we ever get to rove the surface of Pluto or sail Titan's freezing seas, it's possible that we may find creatures similar to these ice worms living there, or perhaps in other similar places. These guys were in the news for a while there. I think they're pretty cute. They're known as tardigrades or water bears, and these are sea creatures that can actually survive in the vacuum of space. So they look like cute little sea caterpillars with 8 legs, but these half-millimeter long transparent little guys are among the hardiest creatures that we have here on Earth. They're native to icy regions, and the tardigrade has one superpower. It can go into a state of suspended animation and dry itself out so that it can endure crazy temperature fluctuations and even the vacuum of space. So, what did they tell us about life on other planets? Well, the fact that they can exist in a vacuum means that there could be other organisms out there that can change into a different state, perhaps drifting through space in search of new worlds to thrive on. Yet another form of worm, we have here what are known as tube worms that are essentially giant sulfur eaters of the deep. They live miles below the ocean under extreme pressure on the edges of molten hot volcanic vents around 800 degrees Fahrenheit. And we don't know of too many things that can feel comfortable in an environment like that, but these worms do. The interesting thing about them isn't the fact that they can withstand extreme heat, but that they can actually gain nourishment in an environment with chemistry that's radically different from our own atmosphere. They're eating sulfides, which are abundant on planets like Venus, where it occasionally snows iron sulfides. So, could tube worms thrive on planets like Venus? In Antarctica, a pool of seawater trapped beneath the ice is apparently packed with microbes that have evolved to live without light or oxygen. So these are the iron-eating microbes in a place now known as Blood Falls in eastern Antarctica. And the blood red color is, of course, iron oxide, similar to the way the surface of Mars is red. So the liquid comes from a pool of seawater that's actually been trapped inside the glacier for 2 million years and is alive with 30 different types of bacteria. And these bacteria are gaining energy and thriving on chemical compounds, totally alien to typical Earth creatures. Being a creature that eats iron oxides instead of photosynthesizing light means that it could exist in the salty iron-rich seas beneath the ice that covers Jupiter's moon Europa, Saturn's moon Enceladus, or other similar icy worlds. So these potential life forms under the ice could be better protected at that depth from UV and cosmic radiation than if they hung out on the surface. So it makes sense. And a bacteria known as D. radiodurans can endure 1,000 times more radiation than a person can because it comes equipped with anywhere between 4 and 10 copies of its DNA, which means that it can recover at least one complete copy of its genome after being exposed to radiation, which is kind of incredible when you think about it. What these microbes prove to us is that there is a way to harden DNA against radiation damage, so creatures on a planet with a thinner atmosphere could still be a possibility. But as awe-inspiring as it would be to find life like those creatures on another planet, of course we're all interested in other intelligent life as we know it. Have they evolved like us? Do they look human-like? What kind of language do they speak and food do they eat? Will we ever find out? There are more questions than answers at this point, and since SETI was founded back in 1984, not a single hello has been received back. Yet. But from this, you can feel free to pick your own explanation. They're not out there. They're too far away. They're too shy and elusive. They're zoned out on computer games. They're too young. They've already happened. They're social distancing. Or perhaps they're watching us and wondering when we'll grow up. There's also the horrifying thought that perhaps all the other civilizations out there in the universe could be spending more time listening, like us, rather than attempting to beam proof of their existence out into space. So with that, we'll end it here and maybe have a short discussion because I'm curious. What are your thoughts?